Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Dan, the voice behind ThatKaitoDan and the Kaito Cooper, and welcome to the return of my RWBY reviews. Yes, it's a little late due to me being in London for Comic-Con over the weekend, and I also needed time to recover, but we are here at last, the first stop on the hype train in Volume 3 territory. First things first though. 1. Do not watch this if you don't want to be spoiled on past events from the past volumes, as well as the latest episode. Secondly, and this is a big one, addressing this being the first episode post Monty's unfortunate passing. Now, obviously, there will be noticeable differences in terms of some of the animation and some of the scripting, but the RWBY team will have worked extremely hard to try and make up for his loss. And also, Miles, Kerry, and Gray are all aware of the future storyline points. So please, let's try to not spam away with stuff like, Monty would have done it like this, or Monty wouldn't have had that happen. I trust in the RWBY team, and comments like that is not only unwelcomed and massively insulting to Monty and them, but it's comments that don't do any good. That being said, I would feel like I'm insulting the RWBY team and Monty if I pulled my punches on my negatives for the reviews. So as a reviewer, I will point out negatives regardless of my respect for the RWBY team, Rooster Teeth, and Monty himself, for the sake of hoping for the show to be the best that it can, though of course it's always going to be just my opinion. Your mileage may vary. So anyway, let's get into things, shall we? Now, Volume 2 had a lot of great episodes and moments and improved greatly in the animation and some of the emotion. However, in the grand scheme of things, and after a rather underwhelming final episode, not much has changed. Cinder's plan is still majorly in the dark to us, and still on track minus a big step in it fallen flat. And the girls are as unsure of what's ahead as they were in the first episode of the volume. So with the Vytal Festival tournament kicking off at long last, and with Cinder and her faction fully embedded into things, what lies ahead, especially with some of these interesting faces that are surely primed to make their mark? Does this new episode jumpstart the volume strong, or did it open the tourney arc with an early fumble? Let's kick it off and look into episode 1, round 1. We open on a very somber and yet beautifully sculpted scene, with Ruby Rose at the grave of her mother, Summer Rose. She hasn't stopped by in some time, and gives her the lowdown on her time at Beacon, her new team, and how her sister and her father are doing, as well as the baddies that they faced, in quite a lovely little moment. It's a very soothing scene that welcomes in the viewer for a quick reminder of things, and we see Ruby very mellow, yet full of innocence as ever. You do see her trying to keep strong while it's clear that she's missing her mother, and yet she's very happy with her life. And the conversation, even if it is just one way, still feels very natural, aided by the visuals looking flat out gorgeous. This shot in particular is already one of my favourites in the entire series, and it's now sitting proudly as my wallpaper. But Tai Yang's arrival beckons Ruby to head back for the tournament, though take note, Tai Yang is in a static 2D image presentation, kind of like when Cinder first showed up and both Emerald and Mercury were in a similar state. So does this mean that there's no model made for him just yet, and he might not appear properly in this volume? It is cool though to see him in some sense, and he definitely looks like what I would expect for a father of such energetic kids like Ruby and Yang. Though Ruby also mentioned that Tai Yang is set to go on some missions soon, which of course makes me wonder if that's to do with Cinder and her group, and it could be a favour called in by his brother-in-law and former teammate, Crow. This scene also serves as a sort of tribute shot from the RWBY team towards Monty, with the birds flying away to form Monty's signature in the sky amongst the sun. Rest in peace, Monty. You'll be missed, and thank you for everything. With that, it's time at last to welcome in the Vytal Festival Tournament. Long teased since Volume 1, but now we're here, complete with an awesome floating stadium, the Amity Coliseum. Right away we see the match taking place is Team RWBY against Team Auburn of Haven, as seen in the little preview shown recently. And we're given the run through of the rules by our commentators for the event, Professor Port and Dr. Oobleck. There is no age or school restrictions, so Beacon can easily face Beacon, and first years can go on against second years. Teams start with a 4-on-4 contest, where if they win, they get to nominate 2 of their members for the doubles round. The round following that being a singles round with one fighter claiming victory for their team and their kingdom. You are eliminated via ring out or your aura levels passing a limit point. Now I already went through parts of this fight in a previous video, but of course we got the full deal here, and it was a very thrilling fight. This was the first fight post-Monty, and I say that Shane Newell and newest addition to the team Dylan Goo worked their magic greatly here. I especially like that even with the winner being rather obvious, I mean it's obviously going to be Team RWBY, Team Auburn did have moments where they were on equal footing with our 4 girls. Oslan and Reese especially. We also got to see the improvements of Team RWBY. Remember in that fight in Volume 2 with Roman and his mech, where the girls had names during their team-up attacks? Well, here we see a lot of quick and effective flowing tag teaming going on with very few callouts, showing that they have become quite skilled at working off each other. See RWBY utilizing Weiss's glyph for extra height in her attack, and RWBY jumping in later to provide Blake with some added momentum to boost for the final blow. Not to mention, we also saw fun ways of working off the biome's environment, like the first use of the on-hand dust crystals aiding Reese with a fire function to her awesome hoverboard weapon, and Weiss feeling really at home in the ice biome since it's her natural element, so it's cool to see how the environments can play a big part in these fights. Also, it goes without saying, another killer track from the music squad. Jeff and Casey once more deliver another battle track gem, this time with It's My Turn. One double-decker clothesline from Yang later, and Team RWBY are through to the next round. But the next foe is beating their hunger at the fairgrounds. Quick note here, I like that in amongst all the usual background populace that we see, we also see the likes of notable faces, like Yatsuhashi, Dove, and Fox. They're all dotted around the place, making the setting feel more ingrained to the tournament event. The girls are about to head off, but Weiss gets a call from her dad. She gives him the, pardon the pun, cold shoulder, so we see that she's still holding her distance from her dad. We do know that, well, winter is coming, so this might have been the final straw if an upcoming scene is anything to take notice of. Before the girls can finally tame Blake's roaring belly, they get stopped by Emerald, who hands back RWBY's money that I'm sure just happened to fall out of her pockets. Emerald's managed to worm her way quite nicely into the team's friend circle, and if it wasn't for us knowing her true motives, the chemistry is strong here that she feels right at home. Also, can I just say that RWBY is especially cute here with her blushing? It's about time we get a blush effect too. Upon mention of how Emerald and her team went on, we jump back to see them wreck house. There's Emerald, Mercury, an undercover Cinder looking like a Mad Max extra, and this little lady, who is more than meets the eye. Literally. Yep, the gothic Lolita girl from the trailer is actually everyone's favorite ice cream lady, Neo. Though I guess here it's more like Noir. Also, with Neo showing off switching from green eyes to a familiar mix of pink and brown, I wonder if her disguise, the whole thing, is due to her supposed power of illusions, or if it's just in the eyes. Note as well, that while it's faint, you can hear a very chilling giggle from her before she curb stomps a poor sap. Back in present day, M dodges hanging out with the four, noting her lot as being socially awkward, aided with Mercury here sniffing some boots. Apparently that's an actual legit method to judge the quality of leather, but yeah, it's still kind of odd. Though I think it might have been just him helping out M's excuse. The troublesome two split off after finding out that Yang and Weiss want to vote to decide Team RWBY's entries for the doubles round, and Emerald drops her persona once in the clear, venting out her annoyance about having to cope with the four's very positive attitude. And yes, let's address another elephant in the room. Mercury is no longer voiced by JJ Castillo, who is also no longer with Rooster Teeth working on some other projects. Now when I was watching this episode myself, obviously I didn't know JJ hadn't returned, and I thought he sounded a lot like Yuri Lowenthal. Well, it turns out it is indeed Yuri Lowenthal himself, taking over the role now. Yuri, for those who somehow might not be aware of the guy's credits, is notable for the likes of Sasuke from Naruto, Luke von Fabre from Tales of the Abyss, Haseo from Dot Hack GU, and the Prince from Prince of Persia, to name a few of this man's incredible track record. And I gotta say, even with the small amount of him we heard here, I think he's already very adept at voicing the laid-back villain, so props there. Same props as well for Katie Newville back as Emerald, as she did a great job selling Emerald's facade and the frustration afterwards. So finally, the RWBY girls get to a familiar face's noodle shop, and Weiss attempts to pay for the meal. However, that's no good, with the card being declined. That can't be a coincidence following Weiss ignoring her dad, so chances are he's to blame. And Blake looks to be sadly denied her big bowl of fishies, much to her sadness, if not for the timely arrival of Team Juniper, with Pyrrha coming to the rescue to pay for the meal. Now for another elephant in the room that's also about a voice. This is the first time we get to hear Monty's brother Neef Ohm as Ren. First of all my respect for him taking on the role. I'm sure it's a situation he never wanted to be in, and for someone who's surely not accustomed to voice acting, he portrayed Ren quite well here. There's an obvious deeper tone that he has, but he still sounded very similar to Monty's take while doing enough of his own thing, and he still fits the character, and I wish him all the best. So after munching down on the mountain-sized bowls of food, we get some fun banter between the two teams, which leads into Nora having a bit of a nervous breakdown. I'm curious if she actually has anxiety issues, or if it's just nerves for the sake of comedy. But that would be rather interesting for the often chipper and bouncy Nora to have that sort of trait. She even drops confirmation of her and Ren being orphans, and even quips that if they be out of Beacon, they be homeless. So did the two meet and live on the street, or were they in some sort of orphanage before they got into Beacon? I really hope we get to explore these two's past soon, because it sounds very interesting. Pyrrha quips that they should all be looking forward to fights with some actual guidelines and rules, no lives being on the line and going up against criminals, like with recent events, which really worries me knowing that she's a bookmark name in Cinder's plans. But alas, it's time to fight for Team Juniper, whether John's stomach is ready or not. The RWBY girls head into the stadium to watch them fight, though note that Yang looked back towards Emerald and Mercury, who are on their way to their seats. Is she aware the two might be shady? Perhaps she was warned about them by someone, namely that masked woman we believe is her mother Raven. What if she suspects them of playing dirty, and because of that decides to drop out of the doubles fight since she knows they are aware of her and Weiss being their picks? She might even split off to stalk them while Weiss teams with one of the others. It's a guess, I know, but it had to have been a look for some sort of purpose. The thieving pair are sitting ready to watch and are joined by Cinder, where they seem to suggest that they know who will win. Does that possibly hint that they've rigged Team Juniper's fight? It would make sense given the aforementioned Pyrrha being on their list. And speaking of Team Juniper, their opponents are Team Bronze from Vacuo's Shade Academy. No idea what the abbreviation for them is, but we see that they are packing a sword, discus wrist blades, a rifle, and clawed gauntlets. We'll see how this team compares to Juniper next time out though, as after the randomizer picks a forest and rocky landscape biome for this fight, the two teams prepare for clashing as we cut to the opening credits to sign out. So yeah, we are at long last diving into the tournament arc now, and after a very fun opening fight and some rather charming social moments, what are my negatives and positives for this episode? Let's begin with the negatives, as I honestly have few to mention. There are some moments where the fighting is a little static, but I chop that up to being the first fight of the volume and the first with the inclusion of some new animators. I do suspect things will be sharper as the volume goes on though. While I do like the more casual look of Team Bronze since they are from Vacuo, going off by what Sun has said in the past, I do feel they don't have quite the same level of detail as some of the others, but that's a minor quip since I don't think we'll get much out of them post their fight anyway. Positives wise, I got plenty. Firstly, the settings deserve major praise. From that opening scene, sunset-bathed forest being wonderful for that tone of the scene, to a very well crafted large audience, as well as the pleasantness of the fairgrounds. They are all very well made set pieces, and even in the 2D shots, I like the detail that's put there, to point out a lot more of the unique traits of each of the kingdoms, like the clean white Atlas room opposite a dusky Mistral bar. Another strong positive is the various high quality mouth flaps and anime-esque expressions. They blended in very well here, and the expressions, mostly from RWBY and a very animated Blake, are high points of entertainment in this episode. Blake being so relaxed and fun I like also, since it also gives off the tone that she's feeling more relaxed and can truly let her hair down, which of course is always clouded to us by the looming Adam on the horizon, which I hope will make for a great point to touch on how free Blake feels before Adam storms back into her life. Audio wise, the background piece for RWBY's opening scene is the right touch of sad and yet hopeful, and every single voice actor, be they returning or debuting, was very solid, hitting the ground running right from the get-go, especially those like Neef and Yuri who had to follow on from past performers. And for the return of my highest voice acting credit of the episode portion of the review, I want to give it to Lindsay Jones, after doing the full gambit of typical RWBY adorableness and excitement with a not often seen softer side in equal amounts of high quality. And that's it folks, the Volume 3 ride has begun, and I feel RWBY returned with an excellent kickoff episode. It carried some emotion, high octane combat, and very colourful chatters in very strong amounts, and set the pace nicely for whatever may come. I think most worries that people will have had in this volume after everything may have been qualmed a little. I certainly feel the RWBY team started off with a well-earned thumbs up, and I hope it continues. But that's of course my opinion. What is yours? Did the volume begin with a high or a low in your eyes? And what do you hope to see in the next episode's fight? Do you think it will also be the episode to debut Crow and Winter? Let me know down below in the comments. Like the video if you enjoyed it as well, and subscribe to be alert of any future uploads. You can even check the description for a link to my Twitter page, where I post updates on videos, RWBY news, and just general British nonsense from me. But for now though, that's all for today's performance. Until next time, have a good day or good night, and peace out.